This is a podcast about both having autism and living with someone who has autism. My mom is Sonya, and I'm Josh, and this is Josh Has Autism.
Hey everybody, welcome to Josh Has Autism.
Hello.
We are glad that you're hanging out with us today. I have a feeling that this is going to be a short podcast because of the subject matter. It's just a difficult subject.
You're already almost about to cry.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of our pups, Oliver,
He died. Oliver died. We have talked a couple weeks ago that Oliver had cancer, and it got really bad, and he was in extreme pain.
Yeah.
Crying constantly, and just needed help to leave, to die. So, for those of you listening that you are not an animal person, you might not really get the depths of how we're feeling right now about losing him. For those of you that are an animal person, you might understand what we're saying. We are one of those families that the pets
are part of the family.
They absolutely are part of the family.
Yeah.
They take up a lot of our time and our attention and our thoughts, and when we're traveling, they are included in everything.
We have to plan around them so much on big trips and everything.
Yes. So anywhere that you are allowed to take a pup, they go.
Yes.
Sometimes places you're not supposed to take a pup, they go. But even to the extent of when we were still going out to eat, we would choose places often that would allow for pets.
Yeah.
And that meant a lot of times eating outside.
Yeah.
But
heck, we would give them cupcakes on their birthday.
Well,
doggy cupcakes.
Yes,
sometimes.
Yeah.
But
Or the little doggy ice cream. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One time they had regular cupcakes, but that's not a good idea. Give the puppies a sugar high. So I'm telling you that so that you understand that Oliver and Einstein, for us, they're not,
just pets.
They're not just pets. They're not, they're not left outside.
Right.
They're not left on their own. They are a part of what we do, our activities, our thoughts.
Yeah.
And when Oliver had been doing really well, and then
he wasn't.
And it was about a week ago today is when we realized that he needed help leaving, and then so he left a week ago tomorrow. So last Thursday he left, and it affects people different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I have to say right off the bat that I'm so grateful for is that anybody that listens to this understands and is aware anyway, because not understands, but is aware because we've talked about RJ.
Mm-hmm.
Josh's sister is Bug. She was married to RJ. Their divorce was just finalized.
Mm-hmm.
And
still great friends, though.
Yeah. Well, the day before, you knew that Oliver was going to die, and you came over.
Yeah.
I didn't even ask you. You came over. You stayed the night.
Yeah.
The next day, your sister showed up with flowers and a homemade chicken pot pie. I'm vegan. So she goes, Mom, I don't know what you're going to eat. But I made this for Dad. I'm like, okay, all right. And then later on that day, RJ came over. And every one of you cried. Every one of you did. It was... So we are those kind of people.
Yeah.
Those are those people, and then other people are not those kind of people. If you're not those kind of people, you don't know what we're talking about. If you are, you know exactly.
If you get it, you get it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. With me, it wasn't until you guys left with him in the car.
Yeah.
And I stayed at home with Einstein to make sure that he was okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it hit me all at once that I wasn't going to see him again.
Mm-hmm.
And
right. And
I hadn't cried in years before that. I've just had a difficult time doing that.
Dealing with Oliver.
No, crying.
With crying, okay.
Yeah, I've had a difficult time being able to cry the last decade or so.
Wow.
I mean, there have been times where I do cry, yes. But it's been difficult for me to go that far. And this was one of those times.
Right.
And it was different than usual, too, because it was so sudden. Like, I knew that he had cancer. I knew that he was going to be going away.
But he was doing really well.
Yeah.
So we thought that he was going to be okay. But we thought that we had much more time with him.
Yes.
Because, the regular doctors said there's nothing else we can do. So I turned to alternative medicine, which is, I'd say I turned to it. I use alternative medicine all the time anyway.
Yeah.
And it was making a difference.
It was.
It was, he was happy. He was eating everything in sight, running around, playing, and, just wagging his tail, just so happy as could be. And then really that about a week before we noticed some changes, but that day that you came over here, that I called you and told you, he couldn't walk, he couldn't, just drastic decline in his well-being, and he was in pain.
Yeah.
One of the...
Which, if I can continue...
Sure, sorry.
It's... Because it was so sudden, it was a lot different than... Like, whenever my grandpa passed away, which was your dad.
Mm-hmm.
Even whenever Dusty.
Mm-hmm.
Dusty was our first dog.
Mm-hmm.
He had cancer for a long time.
Yeah.
And he finally, after a grieving period was finally left us.
Mm-hmm.
But with Grandpa and with Dusty, I had a grieving period while they were still alive.
Right.
Which makes it different than with Oliver.
Mm-hmm.
And so
You had said that before, is that what was so hard for you with them is, it's been...
Seeing them in pain.
Yeah, seeing them in pain, and then once they were gone, it was concrete.
Yes, and it was relief because they weren't in pain anymore, and I didn't have to feel helpless about not being able to help them at all.
Mm-hmm. Well,
as well as that, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, right now you're holding Einstein.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a yellow head because of the flowers.
my friend, my good friend Karen, sent flowers, and they were beautiful. Oh my gosh, carnation, all white
Orchids
carnations,
and stuff.
and it just gorgeous. and I don't know the name of the flower, but this one had the pollen that was all down. It was beautiful. They had these long things. I think
it was an orchid.
I think I might have. I don't think it was an orchid, but I don't know what it was. But it wasn't a rose. It wasn't a carnation. Right. It was beautiful. Well, we had them there in Einstein. I am buying him a it's one of those backpacks that you wear on the front.
Like a papoose or whatever it's called?
Kind of like that. It's kind of like it's kind of like that, but
it's for dogs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's made for dogs, and there's this trail by where we live. That's a 5-mile trail, and he can't walk that much, and it's too hard to hold him. Right. So I just bought this. Anyway, I was measuring him, and as I was measuring him, trying to get him to cooperate, he made his way over by these flowers, and then he got his ear and the back of his head, the top. He's all the pollen came off, and he's a white. Both Oliver and Einstein are Bichons, so they're white, fluffy little cotton balls. And anyway...
And so was Dusty, for that matter.
Yep. And so he is white. I mean, he's white now with a yellow ear, yellow head, yellow neck, because all that pollen came off on him. So that's what's going on. What I wanted to talk about today, Josh, with you, is that... I think that there are some things that I've learned from you through the years, and I was able to handle them in a way that I feel like anyway, you needed, because just by paying attention to you in the past. One of the things is to be direct with you, tell you exactly what's happening. And not try to, I guess some people would say, like, sugarcoat it.
Or water it down or anything else like that,
or soften it up. I certainly am not harsh with that information.
Right. Like, you would say to me something like, this isn't easy to hear, but this is what's going on.
Yes. And with Oliver, I told you that... just that, and that it was time, and he is going to die. He's let us know that it's time.
Yeah.
And the reason I did it that way is because there's a lot of other ways that it could be said, but one thing that I know about you and maybe probably other people on the spectrum is that the clearer the better.
Yeah.
And when something is abstract, it can be confusing.
Yeah.
And so I never used the words with you. I'm not saying that I disagree with this, but I just never used these words with you, like that he was going to heaven.
Right.
I didn't use those words with you when I was talking about Grandpa, because it felt like it knowing you, it needed to be very clear. It needed to be not something that created more questions.
Right.
Or that was something, again, that was...
You needed to tell me things in a concrete manner. Mm-hmm. He was going to pass away and we wouldn't be able to see him again.
Right.
Or at least if we did see him again, he wouldn't be there. It would just be his remains.
Right. Mm-hmm. And the words that we use, like go to heaven or passing away or leaving... those are words that I have used with you to explain that that's how people talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
But it all means that, they're going to be gone and you're not going to be able to see them the way that you used to, or hear them the way you used to, or
interact.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this time, like you said, it was very different for you because it seemed very sudden for all of us. So even though he had the cancer, again, he seemed very happy. Yeah. He was going on walks. Now the last week, he's had some troubles with his back legs, and so what I would do, which, like...
You would carry him everywhere.
Well, I put him in a wagon, and I carried him in the wagon, and then would stop where, and then take him out of the wagon, and, and...
at his favorite peeing places and stuff, yeah.
Right. And, but it did happen, that the change happened very sudden. The change was all within one day.
Yeah.
That was that bad.
Yeah.
So part of talking to you about Oliver's decline, yeah, that's the right word, was to be very clear with you about it, to let you know that it was happening, and then to always think that this is important with our relationship anyway. I always think it's important for me not to tell you how to feel.
Right. You have let me know how you feel about different things, but you have never told me this is how you're supposed to feel about this.
Right.
Yeah. You share how you are feeling and how other people might be feeling, but you never force it upon me.
Right. And this time felt, from observation, it looked like this was harder on you than, like, other with Dusty or with Grandpa.
Yeah.
This was harder. And I say that because it's what it looked like, but also what I know is that the day after, you couldn't even get out of bed.
Yeah.
You were not able to function at all.
Right.
And what were you experiencing then?
The day after, for one thing, I was very depressed. I was very lethargic. I just didn't want to do anything.
Right.
I just wanted to lay there.
I think that everybody's different, whether you have autism or you don't. Everybody's different. Everybody deals with losing someone that they love in their own way.
Yeah.
And in their own time. And some people,
Yeah. I know that with me, while there is the social aspect of it, of someone passing away, that I can be social if I need to be. But at the end of the day, I need some time to myself to be able to
sometimes you need time to be able to really truly recognize how you feel about something.
yes, to consider it.
Yeah.
And to decompress about it all. To not compartmentalize, but to just recognize how I'm feeling.
Right.
And acknowledge those feelings.
Josh, I think that if most people did that, then they would be more in tune with how they feel, just in general. You know what I mean? Like that thing that you're talking about right now. I think a lot of people try not to feel what they feel. And they try not to experience what they're experiencing. And I think that's something different with you, that you just feel it. And what you've learned along the way is to recognize that particular feeling. And a lot of people, spend their time pushing it away, not wanting to feel it.
Right. And
you seem to do the opposite when it comes to Oliver especially. It really was hard on you.
Yeah.
Did anything make it better?
It recognizing how I was feeling and acknowledging those feelings went a long way towards me accepting that it happened.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And it was a new experience for you. Those feelings were new because, like you had said in this conversation, the other time that you experienced death and with people that you really cared about, and we say people, Grandpa and Dusty,
Yeah.
and then with Oliver, this felt different.
Yes, because it was so sudden.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I still had a little bit of time. Like, I was able to say goodbye and everything.
Right.
But it was still less than 24 hours.
Right. Right. And you typically need more than 24 hours notice for anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
And so when it's just something as deep and hurtful as this, then, it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
They were, what it seemed like is that there was a lot of crying. It was a withdrawal. You're not real responsive to things.
Right.
For a couple days after that.
Right.
And you really just didn't seem to be really functioning.
Right. Right.
At all. And so, during that process, did you just need time? Like you felt it,
Mm-hmm.
you acknowledged what you felt, and then you just needed to try not to feel?
No.
What was it like?
The first two were correct.
Okay.
But the final step, I would say, was me needing time to acknowledge how I was feeling so I could move on.
Okay.
And it's hard. It really is.
Well, 'cause
I mean, even for me, I understand that grief can last.
Mm-hmm.
Even if I've not really experienced that past the fact.
Mm-hmm.
Or after the fact.
Right, sure.
Because for me, with Grandpa and with Dusty,
Mm-hmm.
I was grieving while they were still there because they were in pain and everything else.
Right. So you were very anxious and unsettled when they were going through that difficult time. And it was also the uncertainty of when are they going to die.
Yeah.
You are a person that likes certainty. You don't like change. You don't like the unknown.
Right.
And also a part of you is sometimes it'll take, the processing can be delayed.
Yeah.
So did it take you, are you okay now?
Not 100%.
Mm-hmm.
I started tearing up a little bit whenever I was telling you about me not crying and stuff, and it's just
Mm-hmm.
like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So it's even still right now is difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still not as difficult as it was.
Right. Right. What
I think part of that is because Einstein.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys, and just being able to be around you guys and I mean, Einstein's sitting there in your lap. I think he's asleep.
Mm-hmm.
But with him, you've told me that he sometimes in the morning and things like that. He wakes up and looks for his brother.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not so much that he's gone as it is that we're still here.
Right.
And being able to share that with other people, or Einstein,
Mm-hmm.
and it really helps.
I think that's, whether you realize this or not, that is very profound. And I think that is the whole grieving is about that lack that we feel.
Yeah.
Because those that have passed are fine.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And we're left here and there's this void that, you know, and then other things can kick in with grief. You could feel guilt, you know, about, because things can be fixed then. It's like a snapshot of like, oh, I should have done this different. I should have done that different. I should have, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't think you entertain that. So I do recognize, though, that it's that, what you're saying is that it's that seeing everybody function with the hurt that we're all feeling because, you know, Oliver's not here.
Right.
And we've never, you know, I don't, even if I tried, I mean, it's not really something that I have been able to, you know, hold back on. You know, when, you know, my little guy is gone and I'm feeling it. And it's not like something I can just pretend, you know.
Right.
So, I mean, there's no way I could have had this conversation with even, you know, up to yesterday.
Yeah.
It just has been, you know, difficult.
It's been too hard for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is there anything that helps you, though, and you feel things very deeply, and others on the spectrum feel things very deeply, and while we recognize that everybody's an individual, like a diagnosis doesn't make everybody all the same.
Right.
You know, but is there anything that you could recommend that would help somebody that's going through a grieving process? Because one thing that we do know that's similar is that you like things to be the same. You don't like change. You need advance notice. You don't do well when things are sprung on you. And when there's a loss like this, when you're grieving, there's a definite realization that all of a sudden things are different.
Yeah. Well, I think you just went through it pretty well. I mean,
Talking to you about it ahead of time?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And not just talking about it to me ahead of time, but being concrete about things, making sure that things are explained about how things are happening, what's going on, and just even if it's a silent support,
Mm-hmm.
just being there if I need you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really beneficial. And one thing I would like to point out, and this was actually something that occurred whenever I had my accident.
Okay.
Was that it occurred to me that I could have died in that accident.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was another time I started crying. And it wasn't necessarily because I realized I could have died. It was just sometimes emotions don't make sense.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And because of that, it's just having someone there that will support you in how you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Having someone that you can talk to and to talk things through, not necessarily because you need to do it, but if you want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Having someone there that you trust that you can talk to is very... I cannot stress how much of an impact that can have. So it's...
Yeah, so it's just you being able to express yourself.
Yes.
And I think an important aspect of what you were just describing is that there sometimes might be a hard time like labeling the emotions,
Mm-hmm.
really pinpointing what's being felt. But that's not the same as not feeling emotion.
Right. It may feel like you're deadened inside or something like that, but it doesn't mean that you're not feeling something.
Mm-hmm. But I'm also talking about just the way that you sometimes will, like how people on the spectrum get a bad rap for not feeling something, right?
Right.
When it's just the opposite.
Right,
and
we feel too much.
Yes, and so
Sometimes it's overwhelming.
Mm-hmm. Which I think is why you ended up in bed all day the day after he passed, and why you've been kind of subdued and not able to get your thoughts or actions together since then.
Right.
And I think that there's absolutely a connection
Mm-hmm.
there, even though you haven't, this last week, you haven't articulated, I'm not getting out of bed because I'm sad.
Right.
It's clear though that you are having these strong emotions, and so I guess what I'm saying is that sometimes when people on the spectrum don't verbalize necessarily exactly what their emotions are, it does not mean that they are not experiencing the emotions.
Right.
And I think that
sometimes it's very confusing as to what we're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes time for us to deconstruct the different emotions, to break them down and to understand why we're feeling them and
Mm-hmm.
what exactly we're feeling.
Yeah, and I think that it's helpful too. I think that it's been helpful. You can tell me if you agree or disagree, but with you, it's been helpful to like break down subjects and have the conversations about a particular subject. And like you said, that I will tell you how I would feel about something, or how somebody else might feel,
Right.
and give you a chance to express how you feel. If you don't want to say anything, then that's fine too.
Right.
It's but I think putting those things into like the subjects, like it's kind of like a concrete,
Yeah.
like it helps you for it to not be so abstract then.
Right. One thing that helped me with Grandpa's death,
Mm-hmm.
Was all the time that he was sick, I could call him.
Mm-hmm.
I could talk to him about how I was feeling.
Right.
And just being able to do that really made it so that whenever he did pass away,
Mm-hmm.
I felt more than anything else relief.
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, going to his funeral later on, it was difficult because I was happy for him.
Right. Yeah. Right. Because you knew that he was okay. Because for you, it was that concrete point of, he's okay.
He's no longer in pain, yeah.
Right. Right. Is there anything that you need right now?
Just a bit more time, I think.
Okay. Okay. I, this is a difficult podcast for me to do.
Yeah.
And I think that I'd just like to wrap it up. And you are an avid reader.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that. It's your favorite thing to do. And I think that what I'd like to do is just have you read a little excerpt of something that you've been reading.
Yeah.
That you felt was... You told me that it resonated with you on how it is that you're feeling.
So, all right.
This is from a anime?
No, a fan fiction of an anime, yes.
Fan fiction of anime, okay.
Yeah. For me, though, she mattered. She did. As long as I thought of her, she would matter. The world would turn, everything would change, but while I still thought about her, she would matter to me. Goodbye, I said, turning back and letting her go. Remember me. Because sometimes remembering them is the only thing you can do.
Mm-hmm. I love you, Josh.
Love you too.
Everybody, thanks for hanging out with us. And we'll talk to you next week. Love you.
Bye.